Welcome to a special episode of At ChattState. My name is Dale Grissom. I'm your host for today, and we have a student panel that'll be joining us as well as a live audience here in the studio. And we want to say a special thank you to the media department and the Video 1 class for hosting this open group discussion. It's open to the community, the campus. It'll be online as well. So without further ado, our panel has a list of questions in front of them that we'll be looking at, and we'll be speaking from personal perspective, maybe opinions. It's open discussion, as I said. So we're not professionals. We're coming at it from the personal perspective only. So, panel, we're just going to do this at random, and if you guys have a comment on these questions, just let me know, and we're going to go from there. So this is not pre-scripted. Number one, in your minds, what are some of the root causes of depression or anxiety, loneliness, etc.? Maybe you look back at your own life, or maybe you know of a friend. What do you think are some of the root causes?
A lot of times depression can come from things that have happened in the past maybe, or maybe your present. It can come from if you're not happy with what's going on. I know for me, right now, I'm not where I want to be. So sometimes I can slump into a depression, but I try to come out of it. And that's where it comes from for me.
Awesome. And for myself, there was a progression. It didn't start with depression. It started with insecurities, anxiety, doubt, things like that, then loneliness even, seclusion, isolation, and then those things progress to realizing later, hey, I'm really depressed. This is a real thing that I'm dealing with, and it can even go worse than that. And that's when I realized I needed to do something about it. So that worked for me. Does anyone else have an idea of some root causes of depression, or maybe you can look in yourself and think of maybe something that triggered that? Any comments?
Yeah, I would always kind of tend to compare myself to my brothers, and that would always cause me to be a little lonely about they would always have awesome friends, and I would always not be able to get great friends like they do. I mean, nowadays I have great friends, but I would just, comparing myself to people isn't probably what I should be doing.
Comparing yourself. Does anyone else have that experience? What about in the audience even? Yes.
My mother always compares me to my sisters all the time, and they've gone on and gotten their degrees and stuff, and I'm still trying to, and I've made a couple of mistakes. I have a child and everything, and always being compared to someone, it makes you feel like you're not good enough, and if you're not doing what they're doing, it makes you just feel bad. It's like you kind of want to just forget it, because you feel like you're always going to be expected to do what they're doing, and you're not them,
Right. Okay. So now in my life, depression and anxiety were two different things for me. For depression kind of more started within. It was something that maybe a response to feelings or thoughts I was having, low about myself, whatever. And it was like a wave. I mean, it would just, take you over. But anxiety was something different. Instead of it starting from within, it usually started with circumstances. But then my response to those circumstances was one of fear and getting all nervous, shaky, whatever. And sometimes it didn't have a big physiological showing. It was just my response is something I still deal with every day, so in different ways. What about you guys? Some of the things that trigger depression. Thoughts from within for depression, or anxiety, circumstances from without. But what's your experience? It might be completely different. Does anyone have a comment about that? Let's start down here on this end. Want to?
I actually have had anxiety before. I don't know if it was necessarily from depression, but it was I used to twirl my hair a lot, and then it would fall out because I would twirl it so much, and it was an anxiety tick for me. And I don't do it anymore, but it is an obsessive compulsive disorder type thing. And luckily it doesn't happen anymore because I've kept myself busy doing other things, but that's one of my experiences with anxiety.
Wow, that's very interesting. And audience, anybody you want to flag me if you have a comment on this? What about you? What about anxiety? That's a whole nother ballgame for me. It might be the same for you. It might tie in with depression. What do you think?
I, like her, have a little piece of hair that I will tend to pull and tug at, and so the way to not do it is to kind of cut it off. It's just a little piece that I like to twirl. But in a nervous situation, tests coming up, kids getting sick, school, I notice that I do it and I'll try to stop it, but it's one of those things that you do without really thinking about doing it because you're stressed.
Right. Does anyone have a thought about what triggers, let's go back to the depression topic, something that triggers those low moments for you? For me, it's thoughts that I allow to develop in my mind. It's what I call a habit of negative thinking. Because if I let myself think that I have no value, or maybe I'm not as good as somebody else that's on stage or something like that, then all of a sudden I enter into that mode, and that's what triggers it, and I've had to learn to control my thoughts through that. But for somebody else, it might be a completely different trigger. It might be medical. It might be clinical. It might need professional treatment. That's totally an option that we have that we need to consider. But does anyone else have anything that triggers depressive feelings? You have a comment about that? All right.
I don't know. For me, it's like when you compare yourself to somebody else, it goes back to that, because then you feel like you're not like them, so you're not good enough because they seem so great when in reality they could be dealing with the same things that you're dealing with and with the same like insecurity that you're dealing with.
Which reminds me of something, because that sounds a lot like sometimes what you hear from people in high school. So you guys are in college, all students at Chattanooga State and everything, or prior students, whatever. Okay. High school as well. Okay, so you understand this. Exactly. We're on the same wavelength. What about in high school? Was anxiety escalated, or depression for that matter? What were your experiences, and what would cause that? Let's hear about it.
Oh my God. Okay. So when I was in high school, and it wasn't just high school, anywhere I would go, like where I felt like I was under pressure or being judged or anything, I would get anxiety very bad. Like in the mornings on the way to school, like sometimes walking in the building, my heart would beat just because I never knew what to expect, you know. I can't even explain it, but a lot of times if I'm walking, I could be going to church, I can go into the mall, just like the unknown. It makes my heart beat fast. And I feel like everybody's looking at me, staring at me, and then sometimes I have to like stop and realize nobody's looking at you, and I have to take deep breaths, and I get nervous for no reason. I deal with that a lot.
I've had the exact same thing, and for me, walking through the mall was one of the biggest things for me. It was painful, literally. Sometimes Walmart, can you believe that? So if I know somebody, if I have a familiar face, that helps. But if I don't know people, then I feel like, well, then they don't know me, so they're criticizing everything I do. And down to the way I'm dressed, down to how I walk, everything. The minuscule details get me down if I'm not really careful about that, especially at the high school age.
Right. And then another thing I was going to say about what triggers depression, I've noticed that sometimes there have been times I'll be like on Facebook, and I can see people's pictures and their lives look so good, and they're like, I'm living a good life and this and that. And if I'm feeling bad, that makes me even more depressed, because I'm like, well, why are they so happy? Why do they have nice cars and they're dressed all pretty? And it could be anything, you know, and it'll make me feel even worse sometimes, especially if I'm like just sitting at home, you know, feeling depressed, and I'm looking at everybody's life on Facebook, and they're, you know, supposedly having this good life. It'll make me feel like, well, my life sucks.
Right. Well, let's open this up a little more. What does depression feel like? What triggers it? What gets you down? What does anxiety feel like? She listed a number of things, but if you are faced with depression, how do you feel? If you had to put that into words, which was a big challenge for me. I didn't know how to do that at first, but I figured it out eventually. But for you, if you had to put that in words, what's your feeling on that? Anyone ready to go?
You feel like you don't want to be around anybody. You're at a low point. I know I have a lot of issues with weight and stuff, and I feel like I look at other people who are, you know, skinnier and stuff. But inside, I'm really a good person and outgoing. But I just had to realize that for myself on my own. But you feel like you don't want to be around anybody. You just kind of, you know, seclude yourself and stay away from people, and you just feel like you're at a low point.
Well, mine is being too skinny, so I've been trying to find somebody to trade with. But anyway. Yes.
Though, that we have to remember that people put highlights on Facebook. It's not every day all the time, sunshine and rainbows, but that's why, you know, those are their highlights. That's what people put on Facebook.
Well, did you guys see the CNN article? I was just reading it last night, the new rollout that's coming with Facebook and the timeline of your whole life. I just read that article. How funny you guys are mentioning this, which basically shows the highlights from your life as Facebook analyzes them and as you, I guess, designate them. So that's supposed to be out. I don't know exactly when, but pretty soon. Interesting. What do you guys think about Facebook and social networking? Does that affect your view of yourself?
It doesn't affect my view for me, because that's not going to change me and who I am and what I have to do. I think for me, depression is more of my mind's always racing. I always have to be doing something, or if not, I feel like I should be doing something. So that's where I get depressed. If I'm sitting idle and I'm thinking about what I could be doing and I'm not, and I'm wasting time, that, you know, really irks me. And to see that somebody on Facebook that's, you know, living a life that doesn't have the same type of problems that I have, that doesn't bother me. It only makes me want to aim higher. And I think that the image that society has with, you know, Facebook and all kind of social medias, it is depressing a lot of people, and it's hurting a lot of families and lives.
All right, now I'd like to get an audience opinion on this. Do you think that's Facebook's fault, or do you think that's our response to what we see on Facebook, or both? And if with that, that goes to media in general, which is another follow-up question coming later. What do you guys think? You're not on camera. If you want to step up?
I think it's mainly our fault, because we can't control what other people do, but if we choose to input positive things into our life, eventually, if we keep putting enough of that, I can speak from personal experience, it begins to push the negative out.
Okay. Very interesting. Yes.
And Facebook now has really become a place to really open and slander people, and that causes a lot of depression. I know bullying is big on Facebook. People are just putting their business out there for everybody to see, and naming people, and that really can hurt people. And I think people need to realize when they are posting these comments, they don't have to name names. They don't have to say certain people's names just to get their point across.
All right. Well, now let's take this to another personal route. If you look at question 4, for me, I was trapped. I couldn't fix my struggles, but I felt I couldn't tell anyone about them either. This was the whole concept of what I called being trapped in my own mind. It was a feeling that I had because I didn't know how to solve things mentally. I couldn't answer these doubts of feelings of worthlessness or whatever. I couldn't convince myself that, that wasn't the case. I have value too, And so for some reason, I really struggled with that and have for a long time. But I felt like I couldn't tell anyone about that either because I've been active on campus, whatever, and people wouldn't understand. And so they would look at my situation and just squint and say, what are you talking about? So I felt trapped, if that makes sense, trapped in my own mind, so to speak, on that, in that area. So why do we keep things in? And with that, does talking help? What about talk therapy? What do you guys think? Keeping things in, brother?
Well, for me, I've been keeping things in pretty much my whole life, so that's the only downfall of me and my depression, because I always had to be the best person doing this, the person doing that, and me holding it in so long, it hits one certain point to where you got so much on your back till you just explode, and then you just take it out on everybody, your mom, your family. But like me talking to like my girlfriend or anything, is somebody to listen, it always helps to get an extra opinion on your depression. So.
Right. And for me, it kind of turned into a tiered approach where I started looking at things myself, just asking myself some questions, and then talking to friends. Because if they understood, wow, at least I wasn't alone, at least maybe, this kind of makes sense somehow. And then it turned into, well, hey, if there's some friends that understand, you kind of have to pick your friends wisely sometimes on that topic, but then, well, maybe somebody at school or even parents or somebody might understand as well that maybe I hadn't even thought to talk to about. Like our whole Project Ahead here on campus, and counselors, background in counseling, that they're not there to diagnose you or give you medicine. They're not going to turn you into a mental health case. They're there to listen. And if they have advice for you of the next step that you might need to take, at least you'll know. You know what I'm saying? So help to talk. Other comments? What about talking? Does that help?
Personally, I think it really does. Because, it helps you sort things out to get to the root of what's actually bothering you. Because, personally, I have a tendency to say, oh, I don't think anything's wrong, when obviously I'm emotionally upset, and kind of continue on with everything else but what's really getting at me subconsciously. But when I talk to other people about it, especially my parents, because my dad actually is a counselor, I always find out, oh, I didn't even realize that was bothering me to begin with, and then I'm actually able to appropriately address it and turn it into positive thinking and continue on from there.
Isn't it interesting how help can be right beside you, like your dad being a counselor? My dad also works with the homeless in the city and counsels all the time, but I didn't think to go to him about a lot of things until I was a month in, or if I ever mentioned it to him. And he had plenty of awesome counsel. I had a great family, faith, friends, awesome school, But I didn't think. I want to go around really quick and just get your opinion, kind of a yes or no. Does talking help? And perhaps if you want to comment on if you've used it. So we'll just start on this end. Does talking help?
Yes, I think talking helps. It's a way to vent. So it helps, and it'll also be a way to, sometimes all you need is talking. You don't need an opinion. You just need to talk, vent, get it out, and step back from the situation.
Does talking help?
Yeah, I think talking helps because sometimes your whole depression is just because you haven't been talking and it hasn't been like expressed yet. You haven't been able to express yourself. So I think talking is a good way to express yourself.
So you didn't have an outlet, in other words. Duncan?
Yeah, it really helps me kind of just be able to, like she said, get to the root of everything and try to figure out what was the actual problem, and was the actual problem worth you panicking over. And, like, you don't really have to panic about everything. If you have something come in late for school or something, you're fine. You know, they'll let you catch up sometimes. You know, you have a weekend to get it over with. Just don't let it catch up to you, and just really just understand, you know, from someone else's perspective, if it's a real problem or not.
Does talking help?
Yes, it does. I totally agree with that. You know, like I said earlier, with the getting to the root of the problem. But I mean, you could not even know that something's wrong until you start talking to people about it, and you hear from their experience. Oh, I didn't even realize that was actually bothering me, and it comes out that way.
Right. Okay. Other side.
Yes, talking definitely helps. That's all I do. If something is bothering me, I have to get it out. I have to call my friend, let them know this is bothering me. Just listen, let me vent, and then I'm good.
I think talking does help if you have the right person, you know, who listens to you and you can tell them your problems. Also, keeping a journal, you know, a diary, you know, writing down your problems and getting them all out. If you don't have someone to talk to, can also help as well.
Talking helps. It all depends on who you're talking to. Because if you have a conversation with somebody that thinking pretty much the same as you thinking, it's not going to really help your conversation or your depression or anything like that. So if you talk to somebody more positive, it'll pretty much help your depression.
I would say yes also, but I'm pretty vocal, so if I'm upset, somebody's going to hear about it.
Gotcha. Okay, so we know who to keep an eye on, right? All right, question 5. Now, let's take it to another level. We're talking about society. We mentioned Facebook a minute ago. What about television? What about pop culture? What about TV icons? What about celebrities, actors, athletes? On and on and on. For me, I saw a positive and a negative there. The negative, obviously, is if I compared myself to these people that are getting all the limelight, then I felt like, oh, I'm worthless. Oh, not true at all. They just didn't have a camera on me at the time, right? But on the other side of it, there was some positive motivation there because it makes me want to achieve. You see other people that worked hard to get where they are in some cases. And it makes me want to do that. What do you guys think about society at large, the influence of pop culture? How has that influenced you? And if we could, we're just going to go start on this end and work our way around the panel the other direction.
I wouldn't say I necessarily feel any jealousy or anything like that towards celebrities. Most of the time I feel bad for them. Like, take Britney Spears, for instance. I'm so glad I'm not constantly in the spotlight and things like that. That's
a great perspective. What are you thinking about pop culture?
Well, it's hard to explain because I would love to be in that limelight and it seems like they always happy, but which is behind the closed doors, really not. But pop culture it is what it is. It's how you live and how you go on by every day. But I wouldn't be depressed if I was pretty much in like that. Because, you know, we've been in this spot depressed under the limelight our whole life. And if I wasn't getting put in front of the light, I probably wouldn't be more depressed. I'd probably be happy.
All right, let me challenge you guys to do something before we continue. Just Google celebrities and depression. If you put that in quotes, celebrities and depression, and see what you come out with, and you'll find out, and occasionally you'll see news stories, they're going through depression too. There's some big names and some big stories. It's just another observation that I noticed, but I hear what you're saying.
We've been living, you know, in a normal life. If I was to get that life, and I've seen all the difference in mistakes they done made, I'm pretty much to try to do the opposite.
Okay, right, all right.
I think, you know, you want to switch places with people who are famous or, you know, who are great musicians, but then you'll watch their true story and realize that they struggle just as much as we do and have dealt with depression, anxiety. I forgot what I was going to say.
Drawing a blank. But I hear what you're saying. Absolutely. That's a good opinion.
Well, I think pop culture and, you know, all these reality TV shows and everything, the influence it has on me and probably a lot of other females, it makes me very self-conscious of how I look. Like, I want weave down my back. I want to look a certain way, you know, because you see it and it's so glamorized. It's like, well, I'm just a normal person, but I don't want to look bland. You know, I want to look decent, but at the same time, I see that and I want it, you know, and that's the influence it has on me. Like, when I see certain shows and stuff, I'm like, I want that life. And I don't know what they deal with behind the scenes, but when I see that, it looks real. And, you know, even though I know it's not real, it looks real and I like it. And that's the influence it has on me. It makes me want to look a certain way, and I'll be myself, but I like what I like, and that's the influence it has on me.
Interesting. Okay. Pop culture.
Yeah, I think it does have a strong influence, but also it also reflects what your own approach to it is. Because I mean, you can watch things on TV and do it just for, to relax your mind, get just a complete distraction. But like it's been brought up with the teen idols and pop culture, it stands so much as a definition of how we should live our own lives, and we can't address it as, no, this is my life, this is what's been dictated for me to be. And it's hard to get that mindset that when we're looking at the different pictures, a lot of them are edited, and we get the pictures of fame and glory, and when you look at the real story, they're real people, just their dirty laundry has been displayed for everybody to see, and it's hard for us to realize that because we think we're the only ones struggling with this. I mean, even the right song can just trigger this whole, I didn't know I was supposed to think that way, but they think I should be thinking this way in this situation, so what's wrong with me? Why don't I agree?
Wow, interesting. All right, pop culture and how it affects us.
Well, last night I was actually watching the sing-off, and Ben Folds said something really interesting. I was like, whoa, And he said, you got to this place somehow, but whenever you got to this place and like getting famous and all that stuff, you end up getting like in, having to stay at, really bad hotels and stuff, and just like that you probably think there might be rodents and stuff like that. And then even whenever you get famous, you still find yourself in those flea bag hotels, still going, why am I not living the life? And people are trying to, or at least for me, I'm kind of selfish a lot, and I feel like a lot of celebrities are very selfish about that. They want to get what they want, and they're going to do anything they can get to it. But they still end up, or at least I still end up, showing up at the same exact place and going, I never got what I wanted. So.
Wow. Pop culture.
Well, like for me, like when I was at work the other day, somebody told me I look like a certain celebrity, and I thought about it for a second. I couldn't remember who it was, and I was like, what if she's ugly? And I sat there and I thought about it. I was like, oh no. And so like for me, just like that whole compare yourself to people thing again. Like that's what it is for me. Like everybody's always comparing themselves to celebrities and stuff. And luckily she was okay looking. I went home and I looked, and that was okay. But
good, I'm glad for you.
Yeah. But just like that whole, I don't know, just comparing yourself to others and celebrities who look all glamorous and polished and everything.
Right. Interesting.
I think for me, it depends on how you look at it. There is some things where you compare yourself and you see somebody that's a size 0 and you want to be that size because you think that's the end thing. And then you have to sit back and remember that we're all made different for a reason. But it can also be looking at that and wanting different options for yourself and seeing that, okay, well, this celebrity has this, but you don't know the road they took to get there. And finding that out is going to be motivation for me and for my future, because I want to be the best at it, and I've had a hard road as well.
Right. Does the audience have a comment before we go on? Anyone? Sure. Step forward.
I think media can definitely have a negative influence on people, and also going back to what some of the panel was saying, we never know what goes on behind closed doors, because I just read something about Owen Wilson. He's a comedic actor, and he's one of the last people you would think would deal with something like this, but he just survived a suicide attempt. And so, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, I remember that story. Let's jump a question, because while we're talking about celebrities and pop culture, what about us as individuals living that double life, where in one life we have something that we're showing people in public, and then the struggles, things that we face in private? Are we living a double life? What's your comment about that? And how do we maybe address that? How do we support one another in that? Because I can't see what you're going through. For me, I see myself from the inside out. So anything I'm struggling with, you may not see, because you see me from the outside in. Does that make sense? So something going on in my heart might be completely different than you seeing a smile on my face that I know to put there when I'm in front of people. Does that make sense? So what is your guys' take on the double life, and how can we support one another in that? We'll start on this end.
I'm not sure. Exactly.
Do you think people live a double life?
Probably. I would say when I first moved to Chattanooga, I was really upset. Like, I was really depressed, and it was hard for me. But when I went out in public, I wasn't like I was at home, if that makes sense. Right. But I'm not really sure what I could say for others what to do in that situation.
Do you feel like people see you differently than you see yourself?
I don't think so.
Okay, awesome. What do you think about the double life?
The double life. Well, I can say, I probably done lived the double life. I come in and smile, this, that, and the other, but as soon as I walk behind the door, I'm like, oh, Lord, thank you. I finally get a break. I ain't got to smile all day. I can think about all my problems, this, that, and the other. That's more like my double life, smiling right here, and as soon as I walk out, my head back down to the ground. So
That is exactly the way I am, because I live alone. I have a house here in East Chattanooga, and that's exactly what I do. When I get home, that's my chance to pour over all the issues from the day and stress out about them and become anxious or whatever, or actually deal with them, and occasionally pick up the phone and actually call somebody and talk it out. What about you? Do you think people see you the way you see yourself?
No, I definitely don't. I deal with a lot of weight issues. It's never really been a major problem for me, but in high school I would always just be happy, and everybody thought I was funny, was voted class clown. But then when I get home, it's a different struggle. You know what I'm saying? It's just food's always been a problem for me. I don't know about other people, but it's something that you just have to work through yourself and get through.
The double life, yeah, because out in public, depending on where I am, I could be at church and I'm sweet little Robin, and when I'm at home, it could be anything, because I'm in my comfort zone. I can really, really be my true self, because nobody can see me. But when I'm out, I have to have a certain presence. I have to smile. I don't want to look. Nobody's gonna come out and be depressed or have an ugly attitude. You always want to be at your best. So I definitely believe, that a lot of people live a double life, but that's just human nature, I believe. And yeah, what was the other part of the question?
And we want to get into how can we support one another in this, since I can't see what you're dealing with. What's the answer?
I just think, like, I try to be honest, and I try to relate to other people, or I try to let people know, like, I deal with the same thing. We both human or whatever, no matter what the situation is. Just let them know, yeah, I go through that too. People, like, you go in the house and they'll say, well, excuse my house for being dirty. Well, look, my house be a mess too. Nobody's perfect, whatever. So I just try to be real about it and let them know we're both human. It's nothing.
Okay, the double life.
Yeah. I actually think it's a little deeper than a double life. I see every individual as being three different people. There's the person that they think they are, the person other people see them as, and then the person they truly are. And so that kind of does play a lot into just your day-to-day life. You think that you're one way and everybody else sees you as that, but you could be completely wrong, because as we've been saying, face to face, we're going to be polite, we're going to do what's courteous, we're going to try to appear like nothing's wrong in our lives, but then there's always this internal struggle. And then the individual level of, there's parts of yourself that even you're not aware of. Other people might see it, they might not, but there's always that subconscious thing going on. And best ways to deal with that is, if there's something wrong, yeah, definitely take a look within yourself, and also seek outside guidance with that, because the people that I respect most are also the most transparent people that I know. They're able to actually say, I know I struggle with this, I'm working on it, and could you help me work with it?
Okay, so the triple life I got from that. All right, excellent.
Well, I've been really discerning about myself lately and noticing that, like, I love to hang out with people. I'm here. I love, being here, talking about this. And, but whenever you put me behind a steering wheel, if someone cuts in front of me, what the heck is wrong with you? I'm like, I just start, like, getting really mad. I get road rage pretty much. And, people can be that way. They could, some people might be, the opposite, where they don't like people, but they're like, oh, that person should have known better about cutting in front of me. Oh, they need to learn or something. But I just tend to be just the complete opposite. I love hanging out with people, but I hate it whenever people end up being like a little, just kind of mess up, and I'm not sometimes forgiving or something. And back at home, I'm not forgiving about my mistakes, or if I even make like a 95, I'm like, why couldn't I just get that one question right? So.
Wow. So, and a different person behind the wheel. I love that concept because I can definitely relate to that. Double lives, how it affects us, how we can support one another.
I mean, I do think we all live a double life just because, like, you'll see, it's like everybody else has said, you'll see somebody out and you'll be like, they're in a good mood. They must always be in a good mood, and then they go home and, they're, just themselves or they're dealing with their problems and dealing with everything. I think the best way to deal with it, though, is for, like she said, just to, like, be real with it and stuff. And anytime somebody brings up a problem that they're having, be like, hey, I struggle with that too. Just being honest and everything.
Excellent.
For me, I don't have a double life. I'm the same person all the time, and I have to keep it 100%. But I'm a people watcher, so I notice a lot of people that they're one way at work and they're another way at home, and I think that's what leads to nervous breakdowns and depression, because you're always trying to hold up that standard, and you can't keep balance like that. So I know some people live in double lives, but personally, I don't.
Wow. Very interesting. I love the different takes because everybody's situation is different and each one has a different story to tell. Now we're going to go backwards to number 6. Do you feel there are enough helpful resources that are already available in society, and do you feel they're readily available? And then I'd love to follow that up with, what resources would you like to see developed? Maybe that haven't, maybe they have. But as you look in society, or as you go to the inspiration section at Walmart, for example, like for me, I'd avoided all of that. When I was going through my deepest times, I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't want to read a pick yourself up by your own bootstraps type book because I was feeling low. What strength was I going to pick myself up with? You know what I mean? And then part of it was I didn't know about some of the resources, because I've been doing research lately and it's blown my mind, some of the counseling centers right here in Chattanooga and national and international resources that we'll be giving you guys today as we leave. But at the same time, I wasn't seeking those things either at the time that I was struggling. Does that make sense? So there was two sides for me. Some of it I didn't know about, but some of it I didn't want to know about. But what about you guys? Do you feel there's enough helpful resources, and what would you like to see developed? We'll just start back at this end. What do you think? Change it up a little bit.
Well, I'm not sure of the resources that's out there available, because I've never really looked into it. I always look within because I have strong faith, and I have a strong family background. So if there's something that comes up, that's who I tend to lean on. So I don't know of any outside resources.
Okay, very interesting.
I know there are outside resources, I guess. I know they're there. I've never personally taken advantage of any of them because, like her, I do have a strong family upbringing and stuff, and I do have a relationship with God and everything. So that's something that I can lean on personally. So I'm glad they're out there for other people who don't have the same opportunity and the same background I do.
Or a medical situation or things like that as well, right?
Yeah, I have great resources, but the problem with a lot of other people's, like if they're struggling with depression, is that if they want to go see a psychiatrist, it's a lot of money to go to that. And if they don't have, financial or any sort of financial plan, or they weren't able to keep up with their financial stuff, that they're kind of starting to get bankrupt or something, how are they supposed to get what they need even if they're going to be like, well, yeah, I do need help, but they don't have money for it? So
right, so financial, that's a whole nother side to it, especially in communities like where I come from that growing up we had nothing. We couldn't afford dental care, let alone I didn't see a dentist till my 20s, so we couldn't afford that, let alone go see someone that charged for special counseling. I'm sure my parents would have found a way if they had known, but yeah, that was definitely an issue for us.
I actually have a response to the financial issue, because there are plenty of counseling centers that are not only on school campuses that have just people available that, college campuses are probably going to be either very cheap or sometimes free. It just kind of depends on where you go to school. But also at their CBI counseling center that's kind of sort of out the way from here on Macaulay Avenue, they have graduate students on hand that are cheaper fees. A lot of people's health insurance will actually cover this, because that's where a lot of the payments come from, because there might be a cover charge. It's the same thing as going to a doctor, because a lot of people see that. it can be clinically diagnosed. You can get help with that, but sometimes not always. I mean, you could be having struggles because, you know, your parents got divorced or you suffered from abuse, and you really need somebody besides, you know, your own family if that's not quite enough resources or something. There's some larger struggles that only people that actually know how to address it appropriately you can go see.
Okay, so there's some interesting possible resources, but do people know about them? Do you feel those resources are available, and what would you like to see developed if not?
First of all, I think there are a lot of resources. You watch TV, there are hotlines, websites you can go to. If you need to talk to somebody, you can just call any number. There are churches, teachers, counselors everywhere. And what I would like to see developed is, you know, a lot of times when you go to people, it's always authority, someone older, you know, older people and everything. I want to see, like, people around my age or maybe a little older where, you know, if someone around our age, if we needed help, we can go to people who are dealing with the same thing, but at the same time, they've overcome, you know, some of the struggles that I'm going through, and they can help me with it, and we can relate because we're around the same age, instead of I have to go to, like, you know, older pastor or, you know, and then, like, a lot of people say they have family. I have family, too. I have, you know, my faith, and, you know, that's fine and everything, but sometimes you don't always go to that. You know, sometimes you may not always have that. You know, your family, they're going through their own problems. And a lot of times I would keep stuff in myself, you know, and I would say, well, I don't want to be selfish. I don't want to put what I'm going through on them because they're going through stuff. And sometimes you do need an outside source who is there for you, you know, and they don't have to worry about their problems. They're there for you. And it's nice to be able to go to that, you know, that person or whatever it is, and they can really be there for you and listen to what you're going through.
Excellent.
I believe there are a lot of good outside sources. You just have to be able to find the right one that works for you. Like she said, it would be better to have one where they're actually going through the same struggles that you are, so you can talk to someone who relates to the same problems that you're having.
Okay. Do you feel like those resources are out there?
Yeah, there's resources out there for pretty much everyone, you know, like kids, grown-ups. Because me, as young, I had a lot of depression. So I go to the boys club, you know. I talk to anybody at the boys club or a football coach or anybody I know that always smiling or look like they could bring someone up. But boys clubs and stuff like that is a pretty good spot for someone to talk.
That's a great resource. I hadn't thought about that, honestly.
Now that I think about it and hearing everyone talk, I never would have thought of all these resources. And like my family lives in another state, so that's another place I wouldn't have gone. And I'm not religious; I wasn't brought up that way. So for me, I would have to take my own happiness into my own hands. But now that I think of it, there are a ton of resources. So.
Wow, very interesting. So many different perspectives on this. So lastly, as we kind of follow up here, what advice would you all be able to give someone if you were sitting across from someone right now and they said, I'm going through I had a girl come up to me yesterday as we were handing out the free stories. And she said, I'm really struggling right now, but I don't want to put anything on the Facebook group page that we started. It's called Not Trapped Anymore. Some of you already added, I think. But she didn't want to put anything on that because she didn't want anybody else to see it. So I was like, just send me a private message. But she's like, I'm really struggling now. What do I tell somebody if I'm looking across from them right now? If you were doing that right now, what would you say to someone? What advice would you give from personal experience? Or what would you direct them to? And let's start at this end. Are you comfortable beginning that topic? Okay.
I guess I would say to find somebody like she found you, or try to find someone to talk to, a family member, or if you are religious, maybe go there. For me, it was getting out and meeting new people because I didn't have friends here, and that's what really pulled me out of my slump, I think. So.
Sitting across from someone, what would you suggest? Some advice.
First, I would say look in the mirror. Make sure you put it all into yourself first before you even go ask somebody. Don't just go get information. Make sure you secure about yourself first before you going around trying to help anybody else or get any advice. But I always looked in the mirror and say, PJ, you doing this? Nah, I ain't paid that. PJ, you doing? Nah, I really ain't. So that's how I really talk to myself first, and then I get more advice. So
that's where it started for me as well, and then it grew.
If someone came to me and they needed advice, I would try to give them the best advice I could. I mean, every person's different. They have their own struggles, but I would try to listen. First and foremost, everyone needs to just listen. You know, when someone's coming to you, they obviously have a problem and they need your help. So I would, foremost, listen to them, give them the best advice I could, and if not, then I would send them to resources that could really help them in their problems.
I would tell them to find the number one person that they trust, who's going to be honest with them, and who's not going to just tell them anything, you know, and they don't really care what it is they're going through. Who's going to be honest with them, who cares about them. If they don't have that person, you know, they can seek, you know, go to a church. You know, some people, they're not into that. Like this, I would give them numbers. You know, we watch TV all the time, and I would say, call this person, or I would try to give them advice, and I'm gonna be honest with them and let them know that I care and be sincere about it.
Right.
I would say the biggest thing would be to, you know, for the other person is to just ask questions of themselves and of people around them to kind of understand what's going on. To, you know, like I said before, but get the bigger picture. You know, they can be, you know, I would definitely say go to church from my background. I mean, that's kind of an obvious for, you know, people of the Christian faith. But also just, you know, if that's not a part of your life, being able to ask those questions helps you kind of understand kind of where, you know, just say, I'm upset about something. Well, why? You know, what's going on? Is there something that I'm missing here? And be able to see it as something that you can address, not something that you're being afflicted with.
I think if somebody came to me asking for advice, that they took the first step saying that they needed help, and then I would try to walk them through the rest of it. If we needed to go somewhere and find somebody else for them to talk to and get help for them, I think that they would better get through it if they had somebody going through it with them.
Right, absolutely. Does anyone from the audience, anything? All right, well, thank you so much for joining us at ChattState. I hope you enjoyed this particular episode of a group discussion on these topics. We have a free story for you guys today. There's also some hope numbers, or helplines, I guess you could say, that's laminated if you want that giveaway to your friends or use it for yourself. And a lot of other resources on Facebook, like the Not Trapped Anymore group page and some things like that. So check all of that out, and that'll be free for you over here on the other side as you're leaving today. Thank you very much for joining us.